Yeah, thank you, worship team. Man, that is awesome. Appreciate you guys leading us in music. How many of y'all are going to retreat this weekend? Woo! Hey, if you're not going, hey, put this in your mind that maybe you can get to go next year because it's going to be a great time. Also, too, if you have gone to retreat and you've gone to camp, you know this. You go to the same place for summer camp. It's a little bit longer, more like 5 nights, I think, 4 or 5 nights. And it's just amazing. It is awesome. There's something special about getting away and kind of getting away from the distractions and getting to a place. And God does some really cool stuff there, and it's a lot of fun, too. And I was reminiscing a little bit with Jack earlier tonight. There's a guy that goes to church here. He now has kids. He's got kids in the kids program here at Hickory Grove, but he grew up here, and so he was in my youth group. When I came on staff here, he was like maybe a 3rd or 4th grader, and so I remember when he came into youth group, we started doing these retreats and these camps, and one of my most vivid memories of him is I remember him walking up to me and another adult leader who was in charge in his cabin, and he walks up to me and he says, "Hey, when we get free time, can we go back to the cabin and hit each other with towels?" And we're like, "What's wrong with you?" And we're like, "Sure, let's go do it." So we did, and we would just snap each other with towels. And I told Cody, is the name of this guy that did that. Now he's got his own kids. I'm like, if that happened to your kid now, Jack would get fired for that probably. So we're not doing that at retreat or anything like that. So don't be snapping towels if you're going to retreat. There's other safer, nonviolent ways to have fun at retreat. But it is such a good time. I learned most of the card games I know how to play, I probably learned at camp or retreat. Some of the most fun memories that I have in my life are from getting away with other people my age and not only having fun, but truly experiencing God. So big plug for retreat. If you're already going to retreat and you know that, man, just be praying. God, help me to experience all that you want me to experience. Don't be too nervous about it, and don't rush it away. Savor every moment. It's gonna be a great experience. I'm super thankful to get to be with you guys tonight. I'm always honored when Jack asks me if I can come speak. You guys have been doing some crazy, awesome stuff. I did youth ministry for a lot of years. I never took a youth group through the book of Romans. It is a big old book of the Bible with so many awesome truths in it. And I asked Jack if he didn't mind me doing so, I'm just so impressed with what you guys have been learning that I thought, and you'll see why in a minute, I thought it'd be really appropriate if we could just kind of really quickly look at what you've been taught so far. The kind of a 1-sentence summary of each of the weeks, because there's 16 chapters in Romans, and so you're through 11 of those already. Let me just walk through them step by step. You did a chapter each week, and so Romans chapter 1, summary idea here, share the gospel eagerly and unashamedly. Second chapter, we need humility instead of hypocrisy, obedience instead of image, and Christ's work instead of our own. Chapter 3, sin leaves us all separated from God. Romans 4, we are saved by grace alone, through faith alone, in Christ alone. These are big, awesome truths, man. This is foundational, the big slab of concrete that gets poured in the ground before they build a house. This is the kind of stuff you all have learned. Chapter 5, we have been saved by Christ, and we will be saved because of Christ. Chapter 6, as believers enter into slavery under Christ, they are given freedom from sin. Such an incredible concept. Chapter 7, as believers, we have the desire to do what is right, but Jesus is our only hope to defeat sin. And then chapter 8, since God is the author of our salvation, nothing can separate you from his love. All right, we're almost done. 3 more chapters that y'all went over. Chapter 9, God being outside of our plans and our understanding is a great truth and blessing. Chapter 10, everyone who believes in the lordship and resurrection of Jesus will be saved. And then the last time that y'all were in here together, chapter 11, and in fact, my son got to bring the teaching that night, Cam. We have been given access to a grace that is bigger than our mistakes through Jesus. Now, what's interesting about Romans, it's one of the letters that God inspired the Apostle Paul to write. And the Apostle Paul kind of had a pattern with his letters. And a lot of his letters are shorter than this, more like 4 to 6 chapters. This is one of his longer letters that he wrote. The pattern is that he would spend the whole first part of a letter basically teaching new believers what to believe. What is the right way to think? What is the right thing to believe? If you say that you believe in God, that you believe in Jesus, you follow Jesus, what does that mean you actually believe is true? And so I wrote a one-sentence thing to remind you that the first 11 chapters of Romans is this. It's Paul saying to the Romans, it's God saying to us, this is what you must know is true. That's what you've been learning for the last 11 weeks that you've been in the book of Romans. This is truth, and this is what you must know. You must understand this. This is what you must adhere to, believe, and cling to. All right, I've heard some people say right thinking or right belief is what the whole first 11 chapters are about. What you're about to see is sort of a turning into a new direction in the rest of the book of Romans. You've been hearing this is what you must know is true, and this is what you're going to hear for the rest of the book of Romans. Because all of this is true, here's what you must do. Because all of this is true, here is what you must do. Now, I lean towards application. Rather than thinking about things, I want to go do things. And so a lot of people who know this about themselves get really excited more about the last part of the book of Romans. But those who love the thinking part, like the theology and the doctrine, what should I believe, can get really excited about the first part of Romans. But they're both essential. They both come together. How you behave is an indication of what you believe. You can really know what someone believes by how they act. And so they go really close together. All these things you've been learning about forgiveness and salvation and the gospel and unity and humility, all those things you've been learning all this whole time is leading up to this big moment when Paul says, because of all this, this is how you must live. All right? So I'm excited. We're only going to look at the first 2 verses of Romans chapter 12. The very beginning of the turning of this page, like this is what you know is true. Now this is what you must do. And here's what God inspired Paul to write. Verses 1 and 2. I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Now I want to pause there for a moment because a lot of the verses in Romans are like this. Like you look at that and you read it and you're like, okay, I'm not even sure I fully understand that. It's using some language we don't normally use. Like I've never called myself a living sacrifice. So you have to sort of get back in that mindset. Back in the first century, believers, especially the ones who were born and raised Jewish, very much understood about this idea of giving God a sacrifice. And you can go back into the Bible, especially in the Old Testament, and you'll see examples of how they would bring animals to the temple and priests would sacrifice these animals, and that was their way of giving an appeasement for their sin. This animal, the priest would lay their hands on the animal, and that was symbolic of sins, mistakes before God being placed on the animal, and then the animal was sacrificed before God. Well, we know now that Jesus did all of that for us forever, so we don't have to make sacrifices anymore. So what Paul is saying here is because Jesus Christ became the ultimate sacrifice for you, and you believe that, you've put your faith in him, then this is what you must do. Take your whole life and lay it on the altar for God. Sacrifice yourself. Give yourself up to God. And he says, this is your spiritual act of worship. Other English translations will say reasonable act of worship. And in my mind, every time I hear the word reasonable, it's like the most basic thing you should do. It's the most reasonable thing you should do. We're not asking much. This is like the basic thing is what Paul is saying, is to present your bodies, your whole life, your whole self as a sacrifice. Because of everything we've learned about who Jesus is and what he has done for us, this is what we must do. Now, I want us to focus a little bit more on verse 2. Before I do that, though, when you see this, my biggest fear is that you're going to think this is transactional. Like, this is the way I get to earn what Jesus did for me on the cross. Oh, you did this for me, now I'm going to do this for you. And that is not at all what the Bible teaches. It can never work that way. We can never do good enough in our lives to earn or deserve the grace and the forgiveness and the mercy that God gave us through the cross. We can never earn that. We can never deserve it. So then why does Paul say this? It's because he's explaining the most natural, organic byproduct of understanding just how loved you are, just how forgiven you are. Like, if someone did the most amazing thing for you, and they didn't have to, and maybe they even should not have, and maybe even you did something that deeply hurt them, but yet their response to you deeply hurting them was to do something most amazing and loving to you. And how do you respond to that? Well, it's a big response. It's like, I don't know, that's kind of life-changing. And that's what Paul's trying to indicate here, is that because of all that Jesus is and all that he's done, like, we're just going to throw ourselves down and worship to him. Not just with a few songs on a Wednesday night, but with everything we do. Like how we play the sport we play, how we are as a student, how we are as a sibling, as a child, as a teammate, as a coworker, all the different hats that we wear, like all of that, to do that as an act of worship to Jesus. That's a different way of living. So how do we do that? What does that look like? How do we put this in action? Well, I think verse 2 gives us some really strong indications of that. And here's what it says. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. That word perfect can be translated as complete or mature. So do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind. So the whole thing here is that after Paul just says, give yourself to God as a living sacrifice, the purpose of that is for you to no longer be conformed to this world, but to be transformed, to be changed from the inside out. So what I want to do with you tonight is to give you something to really remember this concept of conformed versus transformed. This is what Paul is teaching. We want to go avoid conformity. We don't want to be conformed to this world, but we instead want to be transformed. So I'm going to give you, we're going to get a little deep here for a moment. All right, hang in with me. It's going to get just slightly academic for a moment. You're going to learn a new language, just 2 words from the Greek language. And in case you didn't know, the New Testament of the Bible was originally written in Greek, and we translated it into English many centuries ago. And there's some really good truth that you can mine from the original language of the Bible. So the word that is translated conformed in this verse, Romans 12:2, is this Greek word, and I'm going to pronounce it for you very carefully, systematizo. Systematizo. You can see the Greek, and man, kudos to my man Jack Myros for finding the actual Greek language font to put on this slide. So that's what it looks like. That's how it was originally written in the old scrolls when the Bible was put from pen to paper. And then below that is what's called a transliteration. That's where we take all those Greek letters and turn them into English letters. Systematizo. And it's translated conformed. So a lot of these words in the Greek language are actually 2 or 3 words smashed together. And when you look at the original words that make systematizo, it would be translated like this: to fashion like, or to press into. To fashion like, or to press into. Now, I would like to invite you, if you haven't already, to open up your Play-Doh. We're going to show you what conformity looks like. I got my blue glitter Play-Doh myself here. Now, I just want you to do something really simple with it. By the way, y'all can really help our maintenance team not get mad at me tomorrow if you make sure this doesn't end up in the carpet today, okay? So what I want you to do is just do one thing very simply. I want you to put it between your hands and just press it into your hand. Just like this. Just press it between your hands and then pull your hand apart. Try to make it as flat as possible. And then look at what's on your Play-Doh. And I hope that you will see your lines of your hand, your palm print, if you will. If you see your palm print, raise your Play-Doh in the air like you just don't care. Yeah, all right. Very good. Almost everybody. So do you see your palm print there, right? Very cool. All right, let's leave it there for just a second, okay? Now listen, that's what simply the word systematizo means. They could have used the word systematizo to simply describe what you just did. If they wanted to, let's say, make a Christmas cookie back in the first century, they may have said, let's take the dough, and we want that dough to be shaped like Bethlehem star or something like that. So they found a pattern of a star, and they would take that dough and they would press it into the mold shaped like a star. So friends, this is conformity. Now listen for just a moment. Listen real carefully. Shh, shh, shh. I want you to get this point. This is what's natural, without intentionality, for every single one of us to do all of our lives. And to some extent, every single one of us conform to the pattern of this world. You know what I mean? Because deep down, we all want to be accepted. Deep down, we want to be loved. Deep down, we want people to think that we matter, that we are significant. And in order to achieve that, sometimes we'll conform. We'll do things that maybe even we're not so sure we want to do, or we should do, or our parents would be okay with us doing, or especially God would be okay with us doing. That's when we conform to the pattern around us. It could be something as simple as fashion trends, because like, okay, that's a cool thing to do. I want to be popular. I'm going to just do that. Back when I was a teenager and maybe college age, parachute pants were popular. And this is what they look like. I don't think they look too bad. They were mine. And so in order to be cool, I wore baggy, sleeved, striped shirts and parachute pants. Let's get that off the screen. It might be just as simple as that. My wife told me just yesterday, my wife is Mrs. Sherry Clark, who teaches at Twin Hoffel. And apparently she said, people don't like to wear jeans anymore. It's all leggings. Am I right? Is that true? Oh, you got jeans on. So you're like, all right, cool. So for some of us, jeans are still good. So it could be a simple little thing like fashion trends. Now listen. Shh. But we know it can go darker than that. We know that if we're not careful, we can find ourselves conforming to actions and behavior and thinking that is not of God. And I believe, friends, it's one of the biggest reasons why so many people are struggling with loneliness, anxiety, depression, because we're so, right now, there is a lot of options of conformity being put in front of us. All these different patterns. And we compare ourselves to all those patterns. And in doing that, man, we're just lost. And it's confusing and it's chaotic. And sometimes we don't recognize it because, here's what I believe. Maybe this hits somebody tonight. When we don't notice it, it's because we're either good at it or we're being applauded for it. And when we're good at it and applauded for it, then it feels like it's part of us. But what if this pattern of living, this way of thinking, and this conformity that we're doing, it might feel good to us. People might think awesome of us because of it, but it's not God's way for us. Ultimately, the time will come when it will let you down. It will go away. It will not last. And it's good that happens. Because when that happens, I hope that you'll remember the other option. The other option is rather than to be conformed, to be transformed. And I'm going to show you that Greek word. This one's going to sound familiar to you. It is metamorpho. Metamorpho. So you, not, it's close, maybe more like metamorphosis. Yes, metamorphosis. Y'all familiar with metamorphosis in biology, right? Exactly. Caterpillar gets in a cocoon, comes out a butterfly. All right, so here's what I want you to do. Some of you are already doing this. I want you to take your Play-Doh, and I want you to make it a long, slender piece. And then once you make it a long, slender piece, I want you to simply shape it into the first letter of your first name. Ready, set, go. Sure. You can. Do whatever you want. You can break it up. It's not as easy as it looks, is it? Oh, you did good. Let me see. Nice. There you go. You know what? It's not as easy as it looks. It is easy? When your name's an L, it's easy. Who had a hard one? Nice S there. There you go. I see the L, H, E, T. Anybody named Quentin? Got a Q going on? No? Have any? Got an M? There you go. Oh, there's Molly. Nice. What is that P? Nice. Very good. That's a hard one. Is that B? All right. I actually thought that was a little harder than I thought. Now, focus with me for just a little bit. We're almost done. All right? We're almost done. Give me your attention for just a little bit longer. The reason I had you do that is because that Greek word transformed is completely different than fashion like, which is conform, or press into, which is conform. The word transform, when we look at it in the Greek, it has this connotation: change into completely a different form. It's completely different. What's interesting is we really can't do that tonight with Play-Doh. Like, if we were to truly transform this Play-Doh, we would have to, it would end up becoming something like, a horse or something. I don't know. It's just a completely different change, all right? But the reason I had you shape it into a long piece and turn it into a letter is because the only way transformation can actually happen is by putting this into the hand of someone who knows how to shape it. Whoever wants to turn this simple little ball of clay into something has to have a vision and an idea and a process. It's like, okay, I want to take this, I want to turn it into the letter B, and here's what it's going to take to turn it into the letter B. And that's how something becomes something that it's not. So listen for just a moment. I have some really big questions to ask you that I think the answer to your question determines your future for the rest of your life. And that's a big statement to make. So ready? I want you to listen to these questions one at a time. First question I have to ask you is this: do you believe God is real? You don't have to answer it, but I want you to answer it for yourself. Do you believe that He is real? Okay. Do you believe that He created you? That He wanted you to exist? That He purposefully put you into this world? All right, those are big questions. All right, here's the next one. Do you believe He loves you better than anyone could ever love you? Do you believe that or not? One more. Do you believe that He has a purpose for your life? Now, if you believe those things are true, and I know several of you are like, yes, I believe that. Yeah, I believe that. Duh, no brainer, right? Yeah. I will say, many people, maybe every person, at some point in their lives will wrestle with some of those questions. And maybe you haven't wrestled with them, or maybe you have, but you might. But when you can come back to those questions and you can say, I believe that God is real. I believe that He made me. I believe that He loves me. And the proof of that love was demonstrated, something you learned back in chapter 5 of Romans, that while you were still a sinner, while you still didn't believe in Him, He died for you. And He has a purpose for you. The most important thing you will ever do in your life, friends, is what I'm about to tell you next. And this is what I want us to close thinking about. Let your Creator and Savior have all of you. All of your life. Not just a part of it. Grove Youth, Christianity, the stuff that we're doing tonight, this isn't like the salt that you sprinkle on your life to make it a little better. The difference between conformity and transformation is when you say, I'm going to give God everything about me. I'm going to let my world revolve around Him. And when you let your world revolve around Him, the way you are as a friend, as a kid to your parents, as a sibling, as a classmate, as a teammate, all the different things that you do, all the different parts of your life, if you make it all about surrendering all those things to Christ, and you say, okay, God, I'm going to do everything your way. However you want me to do this, I will do this. And you start looking at verses in the Bible that talk about do unto others as you would have them to do unto you. Like, man, I need to treat people the way I would want to be treated. You see verses that talk about defending the weak and walking in justice and mercy. And the next thing you know is like, well, I know sometimes that's part of culture. It doesn't matter what age you are. Even adults do this, is to put people down. I don't know why we still do that. Well, we stop doing that. Not only do we stop doing that, but we defend others when it happens to them. These are some of the things that start changing, becoming different about you when you start saying, man, I want my life to be all about Jesus. You start really caring for people around you, and you start caring about living out His purpose for you. Whether you believe it or not, the answer to those questions are absolutely yes, 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 yes. And every time that you open up the Bible and go to Romans and other places, you're going to see over and over again that Jesus died for you. The Bible can be summed up just like this. God made you. He made a way for you to be with Him forever through Jesus. And if you simply believe in Him, He will walk with you the rest of your life. The difference is, let Him walk with you. Let Him lead you. Let Him guide you. Let Him change you. Because that's what He desires to do. It's not always about what you do. It's about what you're becoming. And listen, all of you one day are going to be like some of these leaders around here in this room. You're not going to be in middle school anymore. You're not going to be in high school anymore. You might be in the workforce. You might be in the military. You might be in college. You might be in trade school. And you might be volunteering here ultimately with other students. And you're going to start asking these questions like, man, what's my purpose? What am I supposed to be doing? What's my life all about? And I want you to remember this. God knows that already. So just worship Him with all your life. Trust Him. Do life His way, and He will take care of that for you. He will write your story for you. But in order for Him to write your story, you got to let Him have complete control over the story of your life.